Hi guys, once again. As promised, installment 24, part 24 of Dillahunty Rips a Theist. However, to be perfectly honest, I'm wondering whether I should put this particular episode in my series. Perhaps the title, I should start a new series. Dillahunty lets the theist off. And I will explain why. I have to be frank and say with all honesty that I was rather disappointed in this particular episode. I thought Matt Dillahunty was far too lenient with Ray Comfort. That Ray Comfort weaseled his way out, and Matt Dillahunty, for whatever reason, perhaps he wanted Ray Comfort to come back again on another show, that Matt Dillahunty refused to nail him to the timber. We all know that we atheists, well-versed atheists, all are very well aware that Mr. Ray Comfort is an absolute moron. Trying to explain to Ray Comfort the relative intricacies of evolution is like trying to explain the details and mathematical intricacies of string theory and quantum mechanics to a dog. It's not going to fly. So why did Matt Dillahunty try to spend so much time, and he did it rather beautifully, with the analogy of Latin and Spanish and Italian, but that's not going to sink into the thick skull of Mr. Comfort. Matt Dillahunty should have gone for the jugular. May have sheathed the knife in with all due respect. But it is well known that Ray Comfort believes in the concept of hell, and that atheists and believers of different faiths are going there. And that Matt Dillahunty could have done what he did in my When Christians Get Cornered They Get Angry series version 3, where Matt Dillahunty walked through step by step with that woman how stupid and immoral this whole hell concept is. Ray Comfort didn't bring it up until very late in the show, but it's well known what Ray Comfort felt about it, thinks about it, believes. And Matt Dillahunty could have brought it up in the beginning. I wasn't very impressed with the. It was entertaining. It was an alright an hour, but Ray Comfort got off very, very lightly, and for that I'm rather disappointed in Matt Dillahunty. That's my opinion. Disagree with me if you wish, and you can express your disagreement in the comments below. That's my telephone. But anyway, shut up. Here's the show.
Our guest today, who I'm going to go ahead and introduce real quick, is Ray Comfort, who runs Living Waters Ministries, produces a television series in conjunction with Kirk Cameron called The Way of the Master. He's the author of many books, and he has a blog that is frequented by atheists and I suppose some Christians alike, maybe. And he's a popular street evangelist. Ray, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on, Matt. It's great to be here.
How are you?
Really, really good. I'm very excited, and I'm privileged to be on this program. Thank you so much.
Sure. I appreciate you calling in, or us actually calling you, whatever. However we managed to get you on here. There was some confusion as to whether we'd even be able to call out, but toll-free numbers are allowed, so it works
thanks
fine.
for coming on. It's great to have you.
Thanks for having a toll-free number.
Nice to meet you too, Russell.
So, you had asked for us to pull some questions, and we did. Of course, we had some of our own, but I wanted to get kind of started here. Obviously, we have different perspectives about reality. You have within your worldview, or maybe coloring your entire worldview, is this idea that a God exists, particularly the God as represented in the Bible, and I do not. Now, considering that we have a different view about this, what is the best method to resolve that, to come to some agreement about what is truth?
Well, I don't know if you could put your finger on what is truth. I can, as a Christian, I can say I found absolute truth. Jesus said, I am the truth. And I don't know if any atheist can point to some atheist that said that, or point to anything that you can say this is absolute reality. For you, the whole thing could be an illusion.
So Ray, I could do that right now, but you wouldn't believe me.
Okay, give me a try.
Okay, I am the way. Everything I say is true.
Yeah. Okay.
So
now resurrect yourself from the dead, and I'll believe you.
Well, how do you know that happened?
Well, the thing is, for a Christian, we're not going by a belief. We're going by the power of God. Before I was a Christian, I believed in Jesus. I believed that he was an historical figure. But on the night of my conversion, I came to know him, whom the Bible says to know is life eternal. So, just as far more real than I know my wife is my walk with Christ. It's my very life itself. So when Jesus said, I am the life, he means he is the very source of life. He's the substance of life that became a human being for the specific purpose of destroying death for humanity.
Sure. So, but from an external point of view, we're still dealing with a claim. You are making an appeal to some experience that you've had, which testifies to the reality of it for you. And what I'm asking is, absent that experience, how could anybody else possibly know? Could they be justified?
Well, that's a good question. It's like if you didn't believe in electricity because you can't see it, hear it, touch it, taste, or smell it.
Believe in what? Sorry?
If you didn't believe in electricity.
Oh.
Because it's an invisible force. And I said to you, hey, take this fork, stick up this light socket, and you'll more than believe. You'll experience his power. And that's what happens when someone truly becomes a Christian. They move out of the realm of intellect into the realm of personal experience. They don't just believe, they know experientially about the power of God, and that's the power that God puts behind the gospel.
Now, wait a minute. I want to back up a minute, because you said that it would move out of the realm of intellect, but that makes it not a good analogy to electricity, like you just said, right? Because the realm of intellect is exactly how we know all the details of how electricity works.
Yeah, but you don't experience it. There's a difference between an intellectual acknowledgement, electricity is real, and actually feeling its power through your body.
Right. So you're still appealing to the primary, I guess, the primary proof, for lack of a better word, is direct experience. And I'm just asking you, are you then conceding that absent that direct experience, people wouldn't be justified in believing?
No, not when it comes to the existence of God. All you need is eyes that can see it, a brain that works. You look at creation and say there's a creator. But what atheists do, or should I say the new atheists or contemporary atheists, they say there's no creation. That denotes a creator, and that denotes a moral responsibility. So we just call it nature. And nature created itself, which is unreasonable, makes no sense. Something cannot create itself.
Yes, that statement is nonsensical. Nature created itself. There's a number of errors in grammar there. You can't just call something creation in order to say, I'm going to call this creation, therefore it had to have a creator. Obviously, if it's a creation, it had to have a creator.
Right.
But it's not necessarily creation. You haven't demonstrated that. You've just simply asserted that it's a creation. And the thing that you're objecting to about saying nature created itself, that's more of a grammatical problem, because the idea isn't that nature created itself as some kind of thoughtful act. It's that that existence doesn't necessarily require the creator that you claim it does.
Well, you tell me what was in the beginning without saying I don't know.
Well, why can't I say I don't know?
Because that's ignorance, and you can't have that as an atheist.
Well, yes, you can, because atheists aren't asserting absolute certainty or knowledge that, or any of that stuff.
Well, Christians do, because they know that there's a creation and there's a creator.
Sure,
certainly
but
Christians assert that.
asserting knowledge is different from demonstrating that this knowledge is true.
Well, you see, I don't need to demonstrate to a reasonable person that a painting had a painter.
Right. Do you know why?
Tell me why.
Because we recognize that a painting had a painter, not because it's complex, not because it's ordered. We recognize this from experience. All evidence points to this thing having or being designed. Okay, we recognize design by contrasting it with what is naturally occurring. And that's why you can hold up a painting and a tree side by side, and you would say, oh, the painting is obviously the creation of an intelligent mind, because we have no examples of paintings coming into existence on their own. We have no examples of paintings being able to reproduce. All evidence, we have millions of examples of paintings created by thinking minds. So all of the evidence points to this. The contrast, though, is that trees do naturally reproduce, as do people and living things. We have a good understanding of how planets form out of accretion disks from suns. Those things are naturally occurring. That contrast between naturally occurring and created is something that is how we determine whether or not something was designed. And what you're doing is kind of like, you're familiar obviously with Haley's watchmaker analogy, where you find a watch and its intricate workings supposedly lead one to deduce that it was designed. But in reality, what you have is a watch lying on a field of watches in a universe of watches, because you believe everything is designed. So there is no point of contrast for you.
What you believe, if I'm getting it rightly, is that you believe everything has a semblance of design. From the atom through to the universe, it seems to be designed. There's order. There's not chaos.
No, I wouldn't say it seems to be designed, because I was specifically saying that design is contrasted against naturally occurring. Order itself is not necessarily a product of design. Sand dunes in the desert look very orderly, but they're not designed, and they don't give. Not everything gives the impression of design, and those things which do give the impression of design aren't necessarily designed.
People have, for a very long time, described things as appearing to be designed, because the way people learn in general is to make analogies to things that they already know. So when we say how the eye works, we tend to describe it in terms of things that we know how they already work, like a camera. But that doesn't mean that the eye is a literal camera.
Right.
I agree with that.
Oh, of course. But here's my contention, is that everywhere you look in this universe, we see design or order.
No, we don't.
Well, you don't, but I do.
Yeah, and
okay?
that's why. Let him finish.
Let me finish. So, our most intelligent person on the face of this earth cannot create a grain of sand from nothing. We can't create a leaf, a flower, a bird, let alone an eye or a brain. So to say that all this nature, as you want to call it, came to being without a creative designer is to be disingenuous, because it cannot make itself. It's crazy to think that.
First of all, there's a huge fallacy there of saying that the smartest person can't make a grain of sand. I can't even begin to identify how much is actually wrong with that statement. But you're characterizing this as a creation from nothing still, and this all coming to being on its own. If we look at the universe, the limited understanding that we have so far, which is growing constantly, the best method that we have for understanding reality has been the scientific method, by and large. It's the single most reliable, consistent, self-correcting method for discerning truth. Now, if there's some other way of finding out the truth about reality, of course, we'd all be interested in knowing it. But when you say that the smartest person on the earth can't create a grain of sand, therefore, it must have been created by some other...
I actually didn't say that, Matt.
Well, you said it would be absurd
No,
think that this came into its
Let
own.
me tell you what I said,
Sure.
so you can back up a little. The smartest person, most intelligent person on the face of this earth cannot create a grain of sand from nothing.
All right.
We can recreate what
Sure.
God's already given us. We can change it.
Well, we can modify.
We can modify
what
what's
exists.
already there.
Right.
But you are still just asserting that we are modifying things that God gave us, and
Yeah.
I'm saying, apart from your appeal to some special way of knowing, this direct revelation from God or direct experience with God, how else could we justify that? Because that could never. Surely you would agree that your personal experience could not possibly be justification for somebody else.
Yeah, but let's go back to what we're talking about. Do you agree or don't you agree with me when I say the most intelligent person on the face of this earth cannot create a grain of sand, a leaf, a flower, or a bird, or a frog from nothing? We don't know where to start.
I agree
Go with that.
and I also say that 50,000 years ago, the most intelligent person on the face of the earth probably couldn't have created a cell phone from the actual pieces.
Yeah.
I don't know how that's
yeah.
relevant.
And the other thing, too, you mentioned the scientific method. Could you define that for me?
Well, there's a number of different definitions, but the guiding principle is that you begin with an observation, you develop a hypothesis, and then there's a process of testing and falsification, peer-reviewed research where others attempt to replicate your results and to falsify them to demonstrate, that we're constantly trying to prove that this is wrong. And then you get to the point where an hypothesis has graduated and becomes a theory, and it becomes the best current explanation possible. I noticed, there's been a lot of times where you've talked about the origin of the earth or evolution and any number of things where people who understand the subjects much better than I do, and but probably better than any in this room do, have corrected you on things, and yet the arguments your arguments remain the same. And I'm curious as to why that is. I mean, if for example, in your book, You Can Lead an Atheist to Evidence, but You Can't Make Him Think, you answered a question from an email that was, how old do you think the Earth is? And you essentially said you had no idea how old the Earth is, but science doesn't either. Or science has continually changed because, years ago they thought it was 100 million years, and now they're up to 4.5 billion years.
Right.
Well, science hasn't made any steps towards the absurd notion that it's 6,000 to 10,000 years old. And at each stage, the date was the best available. We are building on knowledge as we're standing on the shoulders of giants, seeing further all the time. And so the idea that science hasn't any idea or any good idea about how old the Earth is just demonstrably wrong.
Could it change over the next 100 years?
Will the date become more precise over the next 100 years?
Yes.
Quite possibly, if we get additional information.
So that means at the present day, our modern dating could be wrong, more than likely.
Yes.
So
However,
therefore, science doesn't know how old the Earth is. We could be wrong.
You're still referring to know as an assertion of absolute certainty, and science doesn't do that, and no rational person should, outside of a handful of things that we can be absolutely certain about. Our own existence and direct experience things. You're saying that science doesn't know just because it hasn't come up with a firm date that the Earth is.
That's right. It could change by 1 billion years in the next 100 years, easily.
Yeah, but it's not going to go down to 6,000 to 10,000 years. I mean, that's incredibly unlikely.
Well, I didn't say that.
I understand, but what you're presenting is that as long as you can't be absolutely certain about something, every answer is just as good as any other. That if science isn't absolutely certain to the minute or second about how old the Earth is, that an answer of 4,000 to 6,000 years, 6,000 to 10,000 years, is equally viable as one that's 4.5 billion years, and that's just simply not true.
No, I didn't say that, and I didn't say if science can't be.
I know you didn't say it. That's the implication.
To the second or the minute. I'm saying you guys changed by the billions.
When you talk about error bars, I mean, changing things, it doesn't change by the billions. What are you talking about?
Well, you just check out the last 100 years of history of how old science thought the Earth is, and you'll find it just jumps all over the place. From hundreds of thousands to millions to billions.
Sure, but
so I don't like that. I like something being a little more precise, and when it's more precise, I'll say okay.
But Ray,
I'm sorry. Hang on. Okay. I'm sorry that you don't like that, but that's what happens when you learn more. When you learn something new, You change according with the evidence. The preponderance of evidence is such that it changes minds.
Well, Matt, what would you think if I just kept changing all the time to a point where I was unreasonable, where I'd change terminologies?
Well, what do you mean? I'm not quite sure what you mean by
Well, that's
changing.
the frustration I have with atheists saying there's no such thing as creation, when everyone knows there's a creation.
No, we don't.
No,
and
we
the fact
don't.
that you keep asserting everyone knows it when I'm sitting here as someone who does not know it makes you
there's two or three of you that
demonstrably
don't know that
wrong.
there's a creation out there. I know there's a creation. It's always been called a creation.
Ray, I'd
Yeah.
like to ask you a question about your grain of sand analogy.
Yeah.
Have you ever personally seen any intelligent being whatsoever create a grain of sand?
I don't have to. I can see this creation out there to show me there's a creator.
So on the one hand, you're asking atheists to account for every detail, every bit of information to the precise second, to the precise millimeter of whatever it is they're measuring. But on the other hand, what you want us to accept in return is that the thing you say, because you are willing to come on here and say, I know what it is, I have absolute knowledge, I have certainty, that we should believe you when here you are saying, I've never observed that sort of thing either, but it just happens.
Russell, what I'm saying is that apply the scientific method to that which is around you. Observe what's been made, and you'll come up, there's a maker.
How can I assign the scientific method when there's no observations, there's no tests, there's no kind of measurement that you can even propose that would tell the difference between a universe with a God and one without one?
Yes, there is.
What's the test?
Okay.
Common sense.
Is that really what you think the scientific method is?
That's what all you need to have is common sense and say, look at this beautiful creation with its flowers and birds and
So when
seasons.
you say that your belief in God is consistent with with science, do you say that?
Of course, science just means knowledge.
But what you mean by that is just think about it and apply common sense and go with the first thing that you believe, and that's right. Is that where you're
not
going?
at all. Now, let me repeat it. If you look around, you'll see flowers, birds, seasons, fruits, all these beautiful things in creation that surround us that tell us, or tell a reasonable mind, that an intelligent designer made it because we, with our intelligence, can't create even one grain of sand from nothing.
So anybody who doesn't see this design has an unreasonable mind.
Yeah, exactly right.
Okay.
Or they're not sane.
As a possibly insane and